Hello and welcome back, and today we're going to compare a couple of NASes. It's the name on the door. But today we're looking at a couple of little oddball systems. We're looking at the UGREEN IDX 6011 Pro, their AI locally deployed LLM NAS system. We're going to be comparing it against the Zetlab D6 Ultra. Now, for those who aren't aware, I'm not going to say this is David and Goliath, but I am going to say the scale here, there's a lot of background that we really have to touch on before we go any further. Number one, UGREEN has now been in the NAS market for the better part, at least in the West, for 2 years, but have actually been rolling in the world of NAS in China since 2020-2021. Their AI NAS solution, first unveiled a year and a half ago, is going to be entering crowdfunding in the coming months and rocking out in a few different configurations here on the left-hand side of my left-hand side of the screen, in a Pro and non-Pro variation, both with an Ultra series Intel processor. Now, Zetlab, on the other hand, are the comparative new players. They have also really only been known about in the broader Western sense for about a year and a half, first unveiling at IFA 2024, the same time as the UGREEN NAS solution, and also took to crowdfunding on Kickstarter. But unlike UGREEN's that's going to be starting in the coming months, Zetlab's crowdfunding started quite a long time ago and is actually concluded, and units have started being delivered and is now pretty much available now at traditional retail, with the Ultra series still going through pre-order. Now, the big part of this video talking about these brands, and we'll cycle back to those pages in a moment, is that both of them are making promises that they are providing you with a locally deployed AI, with LLM services and kind of control, management and file access, utilizing the time efficiency benefits of AI without using remote access services, your ChatGPTs, Gemini, whatever. And this video is about saying what they can both do, comparing those services, also talking about what they can't do, but more than anything for me, talking about the new system here from UGREEN that is about to go into crowdfunding versus an already, they say, completed product. Yes, one of these two might command and, suggest that's the one you should buy between the two of them, but really, this is kind of a David and Goliath. I really was trying not to say that, but I think it is. UGREEN is the bigger player in this comparison, and Zetlab being the new entrants, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the small versus the big has achieved here, because although they're both aiming for the same goal of a locally deployed AI NAS appliance, I will say they have gone about it a slightly different way. But that long rambling intro aside, we're going into both of the client applications for these systems. One of the things I want to highlight early doors, not only have both of these systems been supplied by their respective brands, but more importantly, neither one of them has paid for this video. They're watching this at the exact same time you are. But when you look at these client applications here, and I've got this line down the middle of the screen, the Zetlab's client application, I can't make smaller than that. I can run it in the web browser. They've also got mobile applications as well. We're going to be focusing more on the AI stuff than anything else, but I do think we should talk about the apps and services that they both supply. But I can't make the Zetlab one smaller there, so it will be doing this occasionally, which is a bit annoying, but that's why. It's not a glitch on the screen. They could both full screen, but it's easier to show you them side by side to make sure everything is covered there. Now, both of them arrive with an assistant. The assistant for both of them, you have Ulia here on the UGREEN system, and in the case of Zetlab, it's just the Zetlab AI. Both of them give you a kind of very similar user interface as we've seen time and time again, from ChatGPT and more. The kind of standard, the UX of these things has been shown. The idea is that you can ask the system information about your data. You can also utilize and access remote LLM services if you want. Crucially, and don't worry, we'll be circling back to what exactly these systems are connecting to in the background. But you can also utilize it to kind of create databases. But early doors, it's going to be important to know what AI models they are using. So in the case of both, let's go in and learn about their models. Both of them give you a kind of flexibility in the models you can choose to use. So for example, in the case of the UGREEN solution there, The UGREEN AI, they do actually have a suggested one-click installation model. So if we go in and go into the AI console, we can find out a little bit more about that. Let's go into the AI console, and it's QN3, that's what it's running on. And we've got the, again, multimodal model, multimedia, I don't know, I talked about this in the previous video. These are all one-click install tools here going straight into the system there. Also, with that, you can suggest application authorization and control that. The local AI model, which you can use for all the different kinds of systems, you can disable those. They don't really give you much terms in what you can scale in and scale out there in terms of access. And there's also smart commands, something we'll talk about later on, that are tailored to different apps and services. And finally there, if you do want to use the remote access services like ChatGPT, you can stick in your API and access those remotely. Now, on the Zetlab side of things, I will say there is good and bad news that is very dependent on you, the user, because both of these systems, the main draw of these is an off-the-shelf AI LLM. I think we can all realistically know that not only do we have processors now running with NPU, neural processing units on board, as well as deploying AI LLMs within Docker containerization and more, has become a great deal more accessible for the more technological. These are solutions that are designed for people that don't want to go down that road of maintenance or even just the initialization. These are designed to be chewable, easy to set up AI systems that are meant to be within 3 to 5 clicks. Where, for example, say True NAS versus Turnkey NAS solutions, these are designed for simplicity. So the reason I say good news and bad news is I will say the Zetlab side of things has definitely made things simpler. But I do think there will be some users that would rather have some of the customization. Now, what I mean by that this is obviously the user interface, as mentioned earlier on. This isn't the only way AI is integrated there. But when you go into the settings there for this system, number one, you can see that there is numerous different AI models listed for you to install. Now, maybe down the road, it will change on the UGREEN side of things. And within the AI console, there will be a list of available AI models that you can choose between. I can understand why they might not do that, because it will get overly complicated and then you have to support the different models and a variation of different outputs. But still, nonetheless, I do think there are going to be users both happy and sad on the idea that there is a choice of AI LLMs to utilize here on the Zetlab side. Now, again, one of the things you can see, if I go back into the AI modeling there and go into the chat, before I even put a chat here, we can see at the top the built-in LLM, because it does arrive with an LLM pre-configured. You can go and choose to use one of the other models or the one that it arrives with. So you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in terms of configuration with the choice of LLMs that you choose to use. But I will say the actual amount of customization, because remember over here on the Zetlab side of things, we can configure the amount of memory utilization on the UGREEN side of things with how much memory is going to be held, whether we're going to use that cloud model, whether AI, the local LLM would have access to online research resources when it wants to pull further intel to assist with the local searches there. You've got that level of configuration there. GPU acceleration, although that is supported on both models with the utilization of GPU cards. Again, they both support OcuLink in different models. It does scale between 1 to 1. But I would say, overall, the level of customization and control and tweaking, again, for good and for bad, depending on you, the user, is definitely greater on the UGREEN model. But again, the UGREEN model has had more time technically in the oven. So, that's up to you whether you think that's good or bad. But again, the choice of models, I think, is going to be appealing to some users. Again, bear in mind the amount of memory they utilize there, the amount of storage space they're going to take up, because look at that one there at 16.5 and the entry points down there at 2 and 4 gigabytes. And that baseline AI model that arrives with at 3.8 gigabytes. Again, it's really going to come down to dealer's choice. Now, both of these systems have gone quite similar in their presentation of the AI assistant. You've got the UGREEN one here, and you've got Zetlab AI here. But I will say, even though both of them have gone down this 4-door approach, after that, it splinters quite wildly. So, for example, UGREEN, you've got your new chat, you've got your knowledge base, you've got your summarization, where you upload documents to the system, and smart commands to control the system. In the case of Zetlab, you've got search, which is inside the system. You've got shortcut, which is the way to control the system, you've got knowledge Q&A, and then finally you've got the chat, the general chat system there. And again, right now, only using locally deployed assets, no remote access or pinging the internet. But I will say, the UGREEN side of things does give you that option if you want it. So for example, in the new chat there, we've got taken advantage of the knowledge-based option. We can also use the online search. So rather than going via the knowledge-based doorway, you can also translate documents on the fly that you upload to the system. And you can kind of flick between the options in a multitude of different ways there, as well as, again, uploading files from your system. So right now I'm going to ask the same question to both of their search terms. I want to install Plex on this NAS. How do I do that? And again, remember, it's only using locally deployed assets on both of these systems in order to do that. So again, the UGREEN one seems to be awfully polite, but we'll leave that be. While it's getting all those results together, I'm going to highlight again that we are accessing the switch that's guarding both of these devices. We're looking at a 1 hour traffic report here. You can see we've only got the IDX and we have got the Zetlabs here. We have a bunch of DNS servers being pinged. As you can see, there is Chinese DNS still being accessed there. Again, both of these products are designed in China. Hopefully these are things that final retail products iron out. I will say Zetlab has definitely resolved a lot of those. When I first had the system, there was a lot of Chinese DNS being pinged. Again, I've got Gemini running there in the background. So if we just go ahead and just copy all of that in there and just ask it real quick. I've already asked this earlier on. Same task, new information. I basically asked the system to tell me, are any of these IPs something I should be concerned about? So it goes through and it'll start cycling through those in the background for us. We'll come back to that in a moment. Going back to both of these systems, as we can see right now, the Zetlab AI straight away gave us information. There are guides on this NAS, I will say, for installing Plex. So what it's done is access some of the information on this system to pull that in order to get the job done. The same information, by the way, is available on both of these NAS systems. I filled both of these NASs with exactly the same data across the board. So right there, we've got that guide there of using Docker to get it installed there on the Zetlab system. And again, the UGREEN one is still churning out its answer a little longer. Arguably, it's gone from NAS to NAS platform. Again, it is utilizing a lot of the information that I've already stored on this, hence why I've asked a much more tailored question. If I'd like to, I could have gone with the online resources there. But again, overall, really pleased with what I'm seeing there. If we go out of that, we go back into a brand new chat for both of these systems. Let's go for something a little bit more bog standard. Let's go with what is the weather today. Now remember, neither one of these systems is supposed to have internet service access. So really, it shouldn't be able to give me an answer to that question. And as you can see, neither one of them is giving me that answer, which is good, because if it had, that would have concerned the hell out of me. But as mentioned, all of these different subsection doors to access the AI, at least within the chat window here, will produce different results. Case in point, let's go for a search. This is a general search. And if I go for here, and again, let's keep it within NAS, I'll say, tell me about Synology. There you go. They're getting a plug in this video. Why not? Go over to full stop. We'll get the system to tell me about Synology within the search window. So what this does is search the system and find me information that contains that word. Now, this is going to be crucial. We'll come back to this later on. This is where it has crawled through some of the scripts, some of the recorded background audio, stuff I've done in the background. The same goes with images. It's found images of Synology systems. Let's bring that more in there. Which clearly found that even within the file title, and it's actually got a percentile of accuracy there. So for example, let's go for the top file there. It's got that 99%. If we open up within the manager, it's within that folder during Computex, I believe last year's Computex event. And again, it's found the information there in the title. And again, via the OCR there at the bottom right, it's managed to find the word Synology dotted around that file. Now, again, that's within that photo manager. Really impressive stuff. If we ask that same question, and again, that extends, by the way, right the way down to documentation as well, and into different folders and structure, that's quite a nice breakdown. Now, if we're going to shortcut, that is to control the system, so we won't do that. But knowledge Q&A, let's ask that same question onto this. So again, it's found some of that documentation that we've mentioned earlier on, but alongside that, it's now giving more information about Synology based on the information I've uploaded to the system. While it does that, once again, let's flick into unify there in the background. Let's refresh that page, because again, I know it refreshes sort of on a cycle there, but just to be nice and clear, let's go down into the source IPs. Let's find the Zetlab. Let's go ahead and find the IDX. So we're able to see what exactly it is accessing. We've also got the flow map as well. Let's leave the flow map there so we can see what exactly is being accessed during this time. But again, we're seeing that DNS to Google there. So it did do the standard DNS check with some of the other stuff there in the background. We're not seeing any access to, from what I'm seeing at the very least, AI services there. And again, this is going through some of those IPs that we've mentioned earlier on. And as you can see, there's some of those being accessed via that list. We'll break that down later on. But heading back in, we're able to see it there that it's finished up its answer. Now let's finally ask that same question into the actual chat bot. So I've said, tell me about Synology. So again, we're comparing that against that shortcut from earlier on. These are all three of the responses. So we got real-time information about the files, the photos, video, audio, the works, documentation. Then we had that breakdown telling me about Synology linking to documentation where it found that information. And finally, we got that final search inside there that's just given, oh, I stopped it midway. Let's let that finish and do its job. It allowed it to go into the system and find out that information. Now we'll leave that there on the right. Let's do the same thing again now on the UGREEN system. And again, I'm sure both brands absolutely hate that I'm mentioning Synology in my searches there, but you know, let's keep it Nigel neutral. So first up, we're going from the new chat. So from the UGREEN side, I think it's now telling me information based on what's inside the system about Synology there. Again, on the right hand side, we're getting more information there about Synology. Again, we'll have to double check how accurate some of that information is later on, but you can already tell just looking at some of those solutions that it's highlighting there, that it's using quite old data in order to get hold of that, but that is of course the data I put inside the machine. So going into the knowledge base, this is where there is a distinct difference between these two brands. So for example, I've got a new test here. New test here, if we have a little look, then manage the files. I've uploaded documentation I had from when I visited UGREEN. So we go from there, we go back, we ask that question again. Let's actually get that space there, not my typo anymore. And what you'll see is once we're accessing that database, no information was provided because it only has UGREEN information in the knowledge base that I've already pre-prepared. I've told the system I've uploaded a list of documents when creating that knowledge base, and you can create a new one if you choose at any point where you just give it a name, so test knowledge base, and then from there you can just dump a load of files and materials locally from within the system, and then from there it will then search that and answer your questions based on the knowledge base. That's quite nice to be able to have that curated bucket of information, but still I actually think a lot more users are going to like the fact that I can just generically ask the system rather than not pre-selecting, having to post-select the data. I think there are benefits on both sides, and I do think Zetlab could stand to have that curated knowledge base option, but we will go into more stuff later on. But still, there's a slight different deployment of both of these systems. Same goes with summary if you only want to do it with one file. So from my local computer, these are resources from CES. At the moment, only documentation appears to be supported. So as you can see, docx, txt, PDF, there isn't any means for me to upload a photo, for example, for it to tell me more about the photo. But I can go into the chat base, upload from my local computer, and then from there, upload a file. So this is a file here that details different Wi-Fi protocols when I was looking at an ASUS router. So I upload that, and then from there, when I've uploaded that file to the system, will it allow me to ask questions about it? As you can see straight away, it is now detailing what exactly was in that image. So tell me more about this doc. And I can get the system to tell me more. There you go. It knows what it is, but it doesn't quite understand. So now I've labeled it as a doc. It didn't interpret what I was saying there. So again, there's going to be very different attitudes in terms of that data. Now, we're going to take a quick break on the AI chatbot because we have to talk a little bit more about the back end of these devices in how that information is happening. Because in the UGREEN case, I have uploaded crap loads of information to this system. I actually think there's a slight difference because the UGREEN I've been using, the Zetlab's model I've been using for a fraction longer, it has actually acquired more data in there. So in terms of the storage, for example, I've got 2.6 terabytes of data in one pool on the UGREEN and 500 gig of data on the other. Whereas on the case of the Zetlabs model here, if we go into the Zetlabs, go into that, go into the storage pool, again, we've got 3 terabytes of data. Don't worry, it's still just duplicated data from backups over time. Again, that shouldn't undermine really what we're doing here today. But crucially, when I upload data to the UGREEN, I have to choose which elements are going to be crawled afterwards. Now, there's going to be definitely some people that like that, and some of the AI services, and we can talk about photos later on, where you have integrated AI model settings built into them. Now, the way that differs on the Zetlab, when you're uploading data to the system, it can be arranged that it automatically crawls. It automatically scrapes as much information as possible. Now, it is worth highlighting that you can schedule that. So, for example, in the settings menu there, in the AI settings menu, alongside the, as you can see, the AI has been enabled. In both cases, by the way, on both of these systems, you can switch off the AI settings if you choose. The Zetlab, unless you schedule a learning period, which is to say a certain time of day when you can let the system do all of the scraping it needs to do, maybe during the night when you're asleep, so it doesn't interrupt resource utilization towards other projects, VMs, containers, multimedia backups, whatever. But if you leave that as is, as data is going on to the system, it will then scrape it. Now, here's an example of why I really like that. You open up the clips thing here. We've already got one from earlier on, so let's bin that there. You can go in, and I do think, by the way, this user interface could really stand to be tweaked somewhat. But say, for example, I go into the personal folder here. We go into the test media section. Let's select some sort of folder. We'll go for the WTR Max. We'll go for that one from Ustar. Let's go for one that's got a decent amount inside, shall we? Do you know what? We'll just go into, let's find one that's got lots of data inside to play with. As I say, I think this user interface could certainly stand to be improved. There's the Black Friday kind of deals we were finding last year. And this is a video file from a screen recording I did. And then straight away, there's our transcript. Because it's already scraped that information when I uploaded the file, we can see all the information that I said in that video. Well, from there, we can then also choose to export clips, export information about it. We can search within that. So if I look for the word QNAP, it finds the word QNAP within that dialog. But more importantly, if I go back into the AI search thing here and I go and ask it, tell me about QNAP and Black Friday, because that information has been pre-crawled from those video files, from that information, it's managed to find it a great deal better. It's managed to find it and get a little bit more resourcey because that work's been done in the background. Again, let's try that again. Find me QNAP Black, spell it correctly, sorry. I know this video is going to have a lot of me typing. So, as you can see, right there, it's trying to say it's focusing on the word Black Friday and not focusing on the word QNAP there, but it is finding information. Now, I'm interested where it got that information from, I will say, but nonetheless, I do quite like this idea that the information is pre-scraped. It's something I talked about in my UGREEN video before. Now, if I go into Julia and I ask the same question, so let's go for it. For example, if I go into that knowledge base and I create a brand new knowledge base there, we'll use the one I created earlier on. We'll go for that one there, and I manage the knowledge base. Again, because I can only upload images and upload text, I won't be able to enjoy some of the benefits I mentioned earlier on for accessing video, adding audio scraping, where, let's face it, that's where searching becomes significantly more time-consuming, and a time-consuming search that AI LLMs could service and really benefit us with. That isn't to say that the end result will be worse on the UGREEN, but I do like this idea that a lot of that scraping is pre-done. So, for example, in this knowledge base, I'm uploading a crap load of information about that unified travel router that we've talked about on the channel for the last month or so. And as you can see, I'm only accessing data from within the NAS. I'm only accessing data that's already on the NAS. There's no uploading. The data is on there. And then within this knowledge base, it's now creating this tailored knowledge base to that information. So, I know there are going to be users that quite like that. They don't want all of the data that's going into the system to be scraped by the AI. They'd rather selectively choose the directories that it can and cannot access. And again, within the model of the Zetlab, if we go back into the settings, I do think that is where that level of customization that we talked about earlier on, and configuration and saying what the AI can and cannot access in a far more flick switch manner, much like you would with snapshots and backups, is definitely needed. Like within the storage manager there, or with even the file manager, I definitely think Zetlab could stand to include that option for me to ban all out any AI scraping of particular folders. But I do think most users would agree. The fact that the UGREEN NAS is not scraping the video media automatically is a little disappointing there, because let's face it, that is an enormous draw. So again, within that playlist system, we can go for a music track. Let's go for an audio track here that maybe has dialogue. So let's go for one here. We've got some audio files. Again, I've got gameplay music. If we just select whichever file that is, again, seriously, Zetlab, you should really change some of that dialogue there. These are lyrics from this song, Life is But a Dream. So again, it's scraped that information, which I'm sure if I ask the AI to tell me the lyrics of a song that's already on the system, it will do that. Again, I'm more interested in if I upload, and I've mentioned this before, if I upload 10 years of TV shows onto this system, and I, for example, it is Valentine's Day, and I'm like, oh cool, me and my partner can sit there and watch TV episodes about Valentine's Day, I've got more confidence if I go onto the Zetlab system. If I said TV shows that feature Valentine's Day, it will give me a list of options, because it would have scraped the audio, it would have scraped the information from the video files. On the UGREEN side, I don't think this system as it stands will have that. Now, again, the Zetlab system is far closer to the finishing line, arguably, in terms of its AI, than the UGREEN. So it's very hard to thoroughly call out one or the other on that. But while we're talking about the scraping, we need to talk about voice memos. Now, straight away, I would say, in terms of voice memos, a lot of users are going to be, what is the point? I've got voice memos on my phone, why would I want that? I do think maybe the naming convention from UGREEN could stand to be tweaked here, but ultimately what this is kind of like what we've already talked about here on the right. This allows us, so for example, if I do a brand new recording, and I do a recording, I've already given it access here on the desktop, I can speak to this system for a short period of time and ask it to make a note of the things that I am saying, to break down whether it is for a meeting, or if I'm putting dialogue in for real-time information. So whether it is I'm recording a video, whether it is that I'm having on a phone call, whether it is I'm having a meeting with a peer or a colleague, that is done. So I click finish, and then from there it uploads that file onto the system, and then from there I can ask it real-time information about it. So for example, whether I want to classify this as a meeting, whether I want the language on there to let it know, and then I ask it to generate some information based on that file. Now I could have just flat out uploaded an audio file. I can just import an audio recording and upload it onto the system. Again, this is very much an ad hoc rather than done in advanced basis. But what you do get for that, I would argue, is better on the UGREEN than it is on the Zetlab system. So case in point, down here, this was when I uploaded a comparison of the DS423 versus the QNAP TS464. From that, not only did it upload my audio file, as you can see there, and also when I asked it to, and I asked it to translate it into German, it then created that file. Pause that there. This allowed it to translate it into German. Now, it didn't give me the voice version in German. That would have been nice. I don't know if the model will ever be capable of doing that. And I can search this, by the way. So if I search this for, let's go for the word Intel, you can see it's found information there within that document. We're searching it, and I've uploaded the file and then used the assistant. So rather than it being prepped in advance, it's not. But what I really like is, one, the summary. So I've uploaded that. It's now giving me a real-time summary of the file that I have uploaded to it. The same goes, by the way, for that system note-taking. It's generating, it's too short for that, unfortunately, but it can generate a summary of the information that has been uploaded to it from a voice note. But on top of that, you've got the mind map. Now, this is quite interesting. This breaks down that audio file into the relevant topics, the sections, and then breaks down into what is covered, what isn't, and then you can find out more information from that, breaking it down into a nice workflow. That's nice. I really like that. That is something I want to see on the Zetlab. But as discussed, there's going to be times where one method is more desirable than the other to different users. So for example, when you're looking at documentation, again, we're going to look at simple Word documents here. One of the things that I really like on the UGREEN side of things is not only, and we've talked about this in previous videos, the fact that you can just open up docs because it's got only Office already built in there, but more precisely, I can right click that doc and then immediately go in and ask it to summarize this document on the fly. That's going to be appealing. So right now it's analyzing the doc while I've uploaded it, and then I can just quickly say, after it's now going to do its summary of the document, I can then ask Ulia to give me information about that document on the fly, of being very precise about it, and therefore giving me a level of choice about when the AI is going to do its thing. Now on the right hand side here, when we look at the Zetlab system, we've got a bunch of docs here. Let's go and find the same doc. If I right click that, I can share it. Information on it is a little scant. You can see the AI has learned it, and I can add a tag manually, but even then, if I try to double click it, I can't open it up. Now, I could go into the App Center. I could, via the App Center, install an Office application, and there are official apps there, as well as going in for different apps and services that are supported on the platform via their App Center. Again, mostly containerized applications, lots that you can play with. But it's not native. And also that idea that I can right click to get real-time information about a file, particularly documents, because let's face it, unlike a photo where you can see, when it comes to documentation, you might have ream after ream after ream of data that you might want to find out about ad hoc. And having that option to do it this way round is going to be quite desirable to some people, rather than the pre-called methodology where if I go in and direct it towards a specific file, so if I go into the chat there and say, tell me about the QNAP Tech Summit. Do you know what? Just that. Let's see what it can do with just that question. It's then going to access the system. As you can see, it's finding that information because it's uploaded to the system, and therefore it's got that information because it's crawled this, built into its database there. But it's still, I like that idea of ad hoc choice, and I know there's going to be some users that do it. Really just comes down to a different way. You want the AI to be either prepared or just available when you want it. Ding, press the button, get some service, and then it goes away when you don't want it. Now, as mentioned, both of these brands allow you to take advantage of edge AI applications and services when it comes to photography. So in the case of both of these systems, I've already uploaded a crap load of information in terms of photos, lots of stuff from the videos, lots of stuff from different coverage throughout the last year and a half. And on the UGREEN side, you can see all of the images there, all scrolled through different NAS solutions and images that we've uploaded to it. There's all of that stuff with the portable router. Again, if we open up that video file there, hopefully it's got no sound in it. I'll just quickly mute that just in case it's annoying for the viewer. And then from there, again, we can, if there's people in it, we can add them, then we can share it, but it's not crawling any real-time information about that video file. If we head over to the Zetlab side of things, let's find ourselves a video file, a comparative video file. Let's go for one that's a bit rabbity there, shall we? We'll go for this one that's presumably some sort of background script for a video. Let's mute that there. Actually, that's just a clip. That's not going to have any dialogue. We'll go for that one there. There's me playing with my belt before a video. Do you know what? Let's leave that in there. Let's play that file. And it's too heavy. It's too heavy to play there in the browser. This is a big old DGI file. That was when I was originally reviewing the Zetlab. And if we go into that information there on the right-hand side, again, we're playing it. Can we find the information? We can download it. And there on the right-hand side, we've got that summary. We've got that script there on the right-hand side. Again, this is a fairly hefty DGI file. I think it's like 12, maybe 16 gigabytes to play that in the web on the browser. I think quite difficult, but still, nonetheless, the point is it's pulling that information there already in advance. Now, on the UGREEN side, when it comes to the AI modeling for the photography, you go into the AI, there is a lot of models we can play with here for image recognition. Again, whether it's pet recognition, whether it's text recognition, there's a lot of different models here that we can play with, and these models can be configured. Again, within the UGREEN side, you've got those options to configure if you want them. And again, it's really going to come down to the ethos of the brand, how much or whether they believe users actually want to play around, or they're buying an off-the-shelf AI to not worry about that too much. And if we flick over to the Zetlab side, we go into the options and configuration. There isn't a lot there. There isn't. You've got the simple option of uploading there. If we go into the different configuration options, you've got view, you've got sort, and you've got refresh, upload photos, albums, and that's really it. And that's what I mean about the level of configuration when it comes to the AI, whether you want that or not. Now, again, heading back into the switch here in the background, we can see what's happening with the file stuff. So again, we've got those 114, they're quite well-known Chinese DNSs. Both of these systems do appear to be pinging, I would argue, China, but again, mainly for DNS, almost certainly because of different apps and services that are pre-installed. So I've gone and sort of uploaded all that information to find out more info about what's being accessed via the NAT and obviously different IPs being accessed. It is worth highlighting, by the way, that when I asked it about unpopular or safe, it is including Plex in that. So one of the things this Gemini thing's moaning about is that Zetlab is still trying to ping Plex. That's because I've installed Plex. I really should have blanked the whole system. So again, it says highest concern, but it really isn't. But again, it's the persistent P2P tunnels it's highlighting there. So a lot of these are still systems that are in development. Both systems are doing a decent amount of reach out, and again, a lot of that you can control via your own switch and router management there. And again, as these systems hopefully get more optimized for Western audiences, this will be something that's largely eliminated. We have started seeing that in a lot of the NAS systems, but arguably there's a wider range of scraping happening on the Zetlab. Again, it has been running for longer and it has got apps installed on there, we have to be fair, but the UGREEN is more persistent in its DNS spamming, as you can see there between them. Again, your mileage will vary based on the apps and services you install. So in the case of this, I've put a lot more apps and services on. On the UGREEN side, I have installed their base level apps, but many of them not to complete installation. We're not reviewing the full OS, we're just looking at the AI stuff. But one area I think both of these brands could stand to really double down on is control. Because as mentioned earlier on, when we go into both of their chat modus operandi here and we go back into the main, they've both got this ability to quote unquote control the system. So both of them, you can ask it via smart commands, things like what's the IP? So if we what is my NAS IP? And we copy that into both systems and we ask it to give us more information about the IP of our NAS. Now, again, we've got the IPs. It's given us both the NICs of the individual system. So again, let's go in. What are the temps of my hard drives? Let's go for that. Ask it at exactly the same time. Let's see what both of those. So the Zetlab has given me the specs. That's not answered my question. It's not told me the temps of my hard drives. If I go in and ask it the same question, I ask it to give me the temps of the SSDs. In the case of the UGREEN, it has given me my drive media. Now, I do think it's just sensed that I've asked it about storage, but at the very least, yes, there's an influx of information on the UGREEN side, but at the very least, it has answered my question. I've wanted to know the temps of my hard drives, and it has told me. Whereas the Zetlab, it's given me my specs again. So let's go for another one. Let's go for which users are accessing my NAS right now. Let's ask that question to both systems. Again, this is more of an information than a control, to be fair. And it's saying Ulia can't help me with that question right now. And if we go on that, it's asking me my IP again. And this is what I mean about the control. Neither one of these, I would argue, is a fully complete system right now. But arguably, the UGREEN, at least on those questions, has given me a little bit more. Yes, you can ask questions like, oh, well, not even questions, you can give commands. So, for example, check my firmware. So check my firmware to get more real-time information. Again, it's still giving me the same answer there on the Zetlab. If I go for it there, is there a firmware update available? Maybe I could spell available correctly. Let's go for that. I mean, technically it should interpret a lot of what I'm saying anyway. So some things, again, Ulia is by no means finished, but as you can see, in the case of the Zetlab, it's now known that I've asked a few questions that it has been able to interpret. So as you can see, now it has offered me options. Now, again, you can, on the UGREEN, actually, at the beginning, so if we come out and go back into Smart Commands, it actually gives you a few variety answers. But I don't want that AI. I'm not going to ask the AI to open the file manager. I could just do that. I'm on the user interface. And there are things like reboot in, restart my NAS, shut down my NAS, turn off my device. Yes, these are things that would be nice for voice control, and some of these apps and services, by the way, are built into the mobile application. But there still isn't a huge amount of control. And for me, local AI NAS deployment should serve three main purposes for keeping it user-friendly. Number one, it should allow users to get real-time information about their data. So if I want to know, for example, with a spreadsheet, or how many files on this system, an example we given before, if I work in HR and I've got 3,000 employee records, I want to be able to ask it to tell me which of these employees meet a certain variable, been at the company a certain time, are of a certain age. I want to be able to ask that question and then get that information. I think both of these systems to a point will give me that. The second thing I want an AI and a locally deployed NAS to do is allow me to search my files for quick retrieval on video, audio, non-traditional text-based media. I think the Zetlab is doing a better job of that than the UGREEN right now. And finally, I want to be able to control my NAS via human language. And I think in that case, the Zetlab, which has had more time in development, isn't really giving me that. Neither one of them really is, but I would argue that the UGREEN is doing a better job of that. And how many of these controls are based on what people actually wanted and what they are interpreting people want, we'll have to wait and see. I do know both of these brands have done substantial feedback with end users to try and find out what people want these systems to do and then meet that demand. But I do think UGREEN, at least at the moment, I don't know if they threw money at the problem, who knows, but still, they're doing a better job of answering that demand. But it still comes back around to that question, do you want a NAS that crawls all the information automatically, whether it is decades of data that you've already just stored on it, or data that you're uploading on the fly and you automatically want it crawled, or do you want a system that curates and one that you say, right, now tell me about this data repository, tell me about this. UGREEN still needs to integrate that audio visual scraping a lot more, because it's very light and in some cases non-existent, but I do think that they're targeted a different kind of user. And I think the Zetlab arguably has a little bit of an identity crisis in places where it's trying to be as seamless and off the shelf and non-intimidating as possible by simplifying things. But there is the danger, of course, in doing that, that you create a system that is either non-configurable or is a system that is not as intuitive to a user when it's trying to meet this very strict demand. And trying to maintain that balance while giving users the ability to pick and choose their AI of choice, while at the same time trying to keep things simple by not allowing customization and configuration, is going to be difficult, I think. And on UGREEN side of things, I think because they already have an established NAS platform to build on top of, that's quite a lot of real-time analytical information to be getting by on. And then, of course, there is both of these brands, I think, do need to tighten a lot more of what their apps and services is accessing. Both of them, I believe, are doing the best possible job of not accessing external resources. But of course, in the case of the UGREEN, it's actually giving you the option of accessing external resources if you want. Now, I think between the two of them, neither one of them is a perfect locally deployed AI solution. And if you're going to purchase either one of these devices, whether it was that you went for the crowdfunding for the Zetlab there, which, by the way, they hit a hell of a wall. If you go via the comments and the updates, because a year and a half ago when they rolled this thing out, it was before that madness with RAM and SSD pricing. They really had to change what they were giving people and offering people refunds based on RAM and memory. At the moment, you have UGREEN rolling out three different tiers here, from the Pro to the non-Pro series with varying degrees of memory. It's worth highlighting between them, if we look at the MSRP, let's zoom out there, they're going for $1,600, $1,999 or $2,000, and then $2,500. And if we look at Zetlabs here, we've got to look, by the way, at solutions that include the storage and the memory, because we're not going to count ones that don't include it. We can see the pricing there at $515. We can see the pricing there at $599. And we go into the Ultra Series class, we're seeing, and we'll make sure it includes that RAM, both of them with the RAM, we're looking at $1,600. And for the 8-bay solution there, $19, so just shy. So with the memory included, the Zetlab is still the more affordable option right now after the crowdfunding. You're only going to get these prices here on the UGREEN one within the crowdfunding. So the top tier solution for both of them, $1,559 from UGREEN for the Pro Series with 64 gig of RAM. You can't get it with 32 gig because it is pre-soldered to the board. And in the case of the Zetlab there, that pre-order for the D8 Ultra coming in 400 or so more, but with that you're getting the extra bays. Again, it's up to you. I think comparatively, Price-wise, the Kickstarter pricing for UGREEN matches that of the current retail of Zetlab, but again, we're not even going to include that other stuff in terms of Kickstarter versus Kickstarter, because it's a year and a half difference, and it's not really on to compare it in that fashion. So nonetheless, I think for both brands, if you are looking for a more configurable experience, at least at the time of recording, I would say the more configurable experience for on the fly later on is going to be the UGREEN, but I do think the AI is better suited for those that don't want to get their hands grubby and just want to enjoy the benefits. It's much better performed and deployed on the Zetlab system. UGREEN still need to at least offer people the option of pre-scraping of that data, but also getting on those videos and those audio files for scraping. They clearly got some of the nous there with regards to using that uploading recordings on the fly and that stuff there. That it is there. They just need to tweak it. Both systems, nonetheless, are providing off-the-shelf turnkey, locally deployed AI LLM solutions without getting techie, getting codey, going codey as in code line, going down the road of Docker. And again, the kind of tweaky nature of it and worrying about tokens and API calls and stuff like that. But one day, when both of these solutions are full retail, we'll do full comparisons of their operating systems side by side. But this has been the UGREEN IDX 6011 Pro AI NAS versus that of the Zetlab's D6 Ultra. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Have you backed either of these projects? Again, the UGREEN one is on the cusp, I believe. Let me know. But apart from that, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.